recorded. So for anyone who signed up and is watching this at a later date, hello. So I'm going to introduce myself quickly. I will tell you exactly what I do as a sleep consultant, ages I work with, and then I find that every time I do some sort of sleep presentation, especially for infant parents, I find that it's so hard for parents. At least this was me when when I was a mom of infants. I found it so hard to focus on the presentation because especially when it comes to sleep, all I ever wanted was my questions answered. So we are going to really dedicate this time to be a full-blown live Q&A. And so before we get started with that, a quick introduction. My name is Danielle Green. I live in New Jersey. I used to live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I've been in New Jersey for a couple of years now, and I am a pediatric sleep consultant. So I support families with babies ages 10 weeks all the way through 10 years. So it's a wide range. I know that not a lot of sleep consultants work with those big kids, but my background actually is in elementary education and in child development. Prior to doing sleep consulting full time, I was the director of social and emotional learning. So when I work with families, I'm not just focused on just sleep and, sleep science and biology. I really take a whole child, whole family approach. And so there's really no such thing as a one size fits all approach to sleep training because every family is so unique and there's no such thing as a textbook baby or a textbook toddler or a textbook big kid, right? Everyone has their own unique needs, their social needs, their emotional needs. And so it's really important that when I work with families, I'm meeting families exactly where they are. So I'm going to share a lot of information today, and I'm going to hopefully answer as many of your questions as possible. But here's the thing that I want you to understand. If you are currently doing something that is working for your family, okay, I want you to understand that there is absolutely no need to fix what isn't broken. Okay, so I might say something and I might offer suggestion, and you might be like, well, I'm doing that differently and it's working. Don't change what you're doing. Okay. There's no judgment for me ever. There's no shame. I don't want you to feel pressure in any way whatsoever. If you are at a point, though, in your child's sleep journey, or in your family sleep journey where you feel like a change does need to be made, right? Something has to change. This is a great place to ask those questions. And like I said at the beginning, I said this to Paige, I am here all the time. Okay. My DMs on Instagram are always open. You can text my cell. I think my number is on my Instagram page. You can email me. I am ready to start working with families one-on-one anytime you're ready. So if you feel like you're not getting everything out of this that you needed to get out of it, and you really do feel like you need that one-on-one support, I am here for you. Okay. So I know we're 11 months, 4 years, and 6 years. Okay. If you have not posted your child's age in the chat and you feel comfortable doing that, I would love to know what ages we're working with here today. If not, that's totally fine. Like I said, we are going to turn this into a live Q&A. So any question is fair game. There is no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a silly or dumb question. If you are asking the question, I guarantee you that someone else is thinking it. Remember, I am a mom. I'm a mom of two. I have a 4.5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I have been in your shoes before. I have myself hired a sleep consultant before. So everything that you are dealing with, I have either experienced personally as well, or I'm working with families every single day, just like you. So you're really not alone in any of this. Okay. Um, Lily, I see you're here. I'm so impressed. How are you feeling? Um, that's amazing. I bet. So much empathy. You're doing amazing. Okay. So the last time I did this, people posted their questions in the chat, which was great. If you feel like you want to do that, fine. It did get a little overwhelming because I find with sleep, everyone has a million and one questions, which is amazing. I'm happy to answer. So if you feel comfortable unmuting yourself, showing your face or not showing your face and asking your question that way, that would actually be great. But again, if not, the chat's totally fine as well. So let's get started. Like I said, no bad questions here. So whoever's ready to be brave and ask the first question, go ahead. Okay, let me just look. If no one asked a question, I'm going to start with what Paige said. Okay, let's start with Paige's question. So Paige said she has an 8-month-old. They currently co-sleep and they would love to transition to the crib. So this is 8 months is a great time to do it, okay? Because you're not dealing with a toddler who is stubborn and has opinions, but you are dealing with an infant who is ready to make some changes. Okay. So when it comes to the transition from co-sleeping to crib, what you're going to do is pick a sleep training method that really aligns with your parenting style. So for an 8-month old, you have, I'm just thinking, you can do one, two, you have three great sleep training methods at your fingertips. So oftentimes you're going to go to the pediatrician, and once your baby turns 4 months or even beyond, right? If Paige, you brought this to your pediatrician, they'd probably be like, just do cry it out. It's going to be painful for a couple of nights, but like they'll get the hang of it. And while that may be true, that also may not align with your parenting style. We are a generation of parents that follow accounts like Big Little Feelings and Dr. Becky and all sorts of accounts that don't necessarily align with that cry it out sleep training method. Now, just so you know, there's only one sleep training method that is truly, truly synonymous with cry it out, and that is called extinction. So, Paige, that is one of the sleep training method options that you can choose to implement, but it's not the only one. So, my recommendation would be to pick a sleep training method that aligns with your parenting style and then implement that with consistency. Babies master sleep in a very specific order, for most babies at least. So the first thing that they master is bedtime because their melatonin levels are highest at night. So they're going to master bedtime and then the middle of the night first, and then all of the subsequent naps will come next. So if you start sleep training and you find that your baby's really picking up these skills at night, but like naps are taking longer to master, that's normal. That's totally fine. Babies' melatonin levels, that's their sleep hormone, is significantly lower during the day than it is at night. So it's almost always harder for babies to master sleep. But the short answer to your question at Paige is my recommendation would be to sleep train. Like I said, to pick a sleep training method that really does align with your parenting style, and then implement that consistently. Okay. If you don't know where to start, if you're not sure which method makes most sense for your family, you can always message me privately. I'm happy to talk more about that, what that could look like for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Just one thing, extending from what you said.
Yeah.
So last night we actually did try cry it out. He cried not consistently, but it was off and on for 3 hours.
Mm,
He was not soothing. We actually ended up stopping and pulling him into bed with us because it was just horrible. Now, in a situation like that, I mean, is there a situation where maybe cry it out is not good for the baby? Like it won't work? Or what would you recommend given that? Now, again, it wasn't 3 hours consistently. He would stop crying and he actually was calm for a moment.
mm,
And he fell asleep multiple times, but he would wake himself back up with
mm-hmm,
a startle or something, and he would just start screaming, crying again.
mm-hmm. Okay. So if this were a pediatrician, they'd be like, you're gonna do that all night. Doesn't matter. Just like do it until they go to sleep. I don't love the idea of 3 hours of being awake for 3 hours. Now, I don't know what your daytime looks like. So I'm gonna ask you now, what do naps look like, right? How many naps is your baby taking? Are they taking 2 naps yet? Are they still on 3 naps? And then what was the wake window between their last nap of the day and bed? Because, there is always a chance that I mean, of course, like you currently are trying to break a strong sleep association that they have, but their daytime sleep really does matter. And so if your baby's getting too much daytime sleep and they're not getting enough awake time, that could make it so that they're also not able to build up the sleep pressure that they need to build up and able to in order to fall asleep at an appropriate bedtime and actually stay asleep, right? It might not just be that the sleep training isn't working. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. Looking at my log, so when he woke up from his last nap yesterday, it was 3:15, and we start bedtime at 7.
Okay.
That's a little bit earlier than what I would typically do, meaning like the end of the nap. Usually I would want him to go a little bit later. This way his wake window wasn't too long.
Mm.
He slept for an hour and a half, and then the time before that was 9:30 to 10:05 ish. So it was a little over 30 minutes.
Okay, so an hour and a half nap in the afternoon is pretty appropriate for that age. Obviously, that first nap is a little short, but I'm not concerned about that at this point. Um, an 8-month-old wake window before bed is usually somewhere between like 3 and 3.5 hours. For like super low sleep needs babies, maybe 4, but like really, that's more uncommon. I would say somewhere between 3 and 3.5 hours. So there actually could be a chance that your baby went down overtired and was just having a hard time staying in a deep sleep because there was that feeling of being overtired.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for all your help.
Oh, of course. And if this, these things sometimes require significantly more troubleshooting. So again, always reach out if you need more help.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Okay, let me just read. So Melissa says, my baby's almost 9 month old. She goes to bed around 7 p.m., wakes wakes up before 6 a.m., usually between 4 and 5. How to help her not have early. Okay. So, Melissa, how is your baby falling asleep at bedtime? Is she falling asleep independently? Is she being assisted? So that might look like being fed to sleep, rocked to sleep, bounce to sleep.
Sure, thank you. Almost, I think, almost independently, like just a little bit of rocking, and then she can fall asleep by herself. Yeah, not takes so long time, maybe 5 to 10 minutes for the night sleep. Yeah.
Okay. So when
Uh,
she's being put down in the crib, would you say that she's drowsy? Like, are her eyes almost closed or is she like wide awake?
oh, drowsy. Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, so you've probably all heard the term drowsy but awake. I
Uh-huh.
was I was obsessed with that term when I was a new mom, and I mean I lived by it, and I have since learned that drowsy but awake is actually quite confusing and misleading for a lot of families because we're
Okay.
actually not looking for drowsy but awake, we're looking just for calm but awake, right? If a baby is even half asleep, that's asleep enough for them to, whether it's 5 minutes after being put down, 3 hours being after put down, or in your situation, the early morning, that's asleep enough for them to be able to wake up at one point in the night or early morning and be like, where am I? Like, this is not where I was when I was put down in my crib, right? When I fell asleep, I was either in my parents' arms or at
Okay.
the bottle or the breast, whatever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing you want to do is you really want to make sure that your baby is 100% awake when she goes down in her crib. That's the first thing. Um,
Okay.
okay. The other thing is going to be making sure that she is on a schedule that's age appropriate. Okay. So how
Mm-hmm.
many naps would you say your baby is taking during the day?
Mm, it varies. Sometimes it's two naps, morning and afternoon, and sometimes it's three. Depends on when she wakes up. For example,
Mhm.
if she wakes up at 4 or 5, and then usually she will have another like little nap, starting from like 7, or
Okay.
yeah. So it's depends.
Understood. So at 9 months, we want a baby to be on two naps. If your baby
Okay.
is taking, if anyone's listening to this and your baby is 9 months old and your baby's still taking three naps and the nights are good and the naps are good, we still do want to make the transition just because for their brains it is a lot of sleep. And at this point, we
Mm-hmm.
want to help them be able to stay up for longer. So I would try to,
Okay.
work towards a two nap schedule. The transition
Mm-hmm.
from 3 to 2 naps typically happens between 7 and 9 months. For most babies, it's between 7 and 8 months.
Okay.
A 9 month old requires about 14 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if she's getting 3 hours, say during the day of
Mm-hmm.
sleep, so maybe like a 2 hour nap in the morning and a 1 hour nap in the afternoon, or
Mm,
1.5 hour naps during the day,
mm,
then that's
mm,
3 hours. The rest of the night
mm-hmm.
the rest of her hours should be got received at
11.
night. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So you'd also
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're distributing that sleep early because there's a chance that maybe she's maxing out on her daytime sleep, getting too much, making it so that she just is not tired enough to stay asleep for the full night. Like she might be waking
Right.
up early in the morning, ready to start the day because she's gotten all of her hours, right? And when I say 14 hours in a 24-hour period, I just want to be clear, that's average. So your baby might have
Yeah.
higher sleep needs and might need a little bit more. She also might have lower sleep needs and maybe she needs slightly less. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And also that another question, related question. So related to that, sometimes she sleeps for the nap, the last nap, it may be from like 3 o'clock, and then it goes to like 4 or something. And
3 to 6.
then
Okay.
yeah, if she it's a little bit late, and do I need to, like, sometimes she can sleep for 2 hours
Mhm.
for that time. So do I need to wake her up and then put her to the bed for the next night sleep? Because I
Yes.
think maybe daytime nap is too long, and
Mhm.
also the duration, like not the duration, the wake up window wake up window is too short for the
Mhm.
last one, like before between 4 o'clock to 6 or between 5 to 7 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 hours is definitely short for
Okay.
a wake window before bed for a 9-month-old. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
be doing at least 3, but a lot of 9 month
Mm.
olds, there's some 9-month-olds that require 4 hours. So somewhere between 3 and 4 hours is probably going to really help her be able to stay asleep for longer overnight.
Okay.
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 Does
Okay.
that help?
Yeah. What if she wakes up at like 1 p.m. and
Mhm.
then how to help her to stay longer during the daytime?
If she wakes up from a nap at 1, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. From 1 p.m. Yeah.
So then her next nap would be, I mean, is she going down for her naps independently or are you helping her for her naps?
Um, if I just rock her a little bit, she can fall asleep.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
going to be, I mean, my answer to this is always going to be that sleep training or nap training would really benefit her. Um,
Okay.
something I want to explain this, and this is going to apply to like everyone here. So I want you to imagine, I don't know where everyone here lives, but I'm just going to use New York City as an example. I want you
Okay.
to imagine that you fall asleep in your bed and that in the middle of the night, you wake up in the middle of Times Square. Okay. That would be very disorienting. You'd be scared, you'd be startled, and you'd have a really hard time falling back to sleep until you were back in your own bed where you fell asleep at the beginning of the night, right? It's what you're comfortable with, it's what you're familiar with. Now, for a
Mhm.
baby, if your baby falls asleep either at the breast, at the bottle, with rocking in this case, bouncing, whatever it is, and then we transfer the baby to the crib, they are likely going to wake up, whether it's the middle of the nap, whether it's the middle of the night, very startled, very disoriented, because to them, they're going to be like, wait a second. Like, I was either I had a bottle in my mouth, I had a boob in my mouth, I was in my mom or dad's arms before this. Like, this is not where I was when I fell asleep. And so they're going to have a really hard time connecting sleep cycles. So if you're rocking
Mhm.
your baby to sleep for naps, then she's likely going to wake up in the middle of the nap looking for that same level of support that she received to initially fall asleep at the nap for the nap. Now, not every baby's like this. There are some babies who are assisted to sleep, and for all of their years of napping, they have no problem, right? Like they're able to stay asleep. And that's fine. Like if you're doing that and that works for you and you like it, go for it. But in your case, if you're looking to extend her naps and make her naps better, then teaching her how to fall asleep on her own at the beginning of the nap is really going to help her.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that applies to all the naps and also the night sleep. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There's great power in independent sleep. And of
Yeah.
course, if it's
Mhm.
not for you, there's no pressure.
Thank you.
Okay. 14-week-old is napping only 20 to 30 minute and in only 20 to 30 minute increments. Is this common for this age? Um, it can be common for this age. I would say it's especially common for like really, really newborns. There is a sleep spot for sleep training, excuse me. So somewhere between like 12 and 16, 12 and 20 weeks is what I consider to be the sleep training sweet spot. It's never too late. Like I said, I work with kids up to age 10, sometimes a little older. So you don't have to do it in that sweet spot. But to answer your question about what age is it appropriate to do something like cry it out or Ferber, cry it out. So like I said, there's only one sleep training method that's really synonymous with cry it out, that's extinction. That becomes a safe and viable option at 4 months of age. So you're not quite that yet. You're not quite yet there, but in a few weeks you will be. So if you wanted to do true cry it out, wait until 4 months. That's what your pediatrician will likely recommend if you ask them. In terms of Ferber, so I actually, when I work with families one-on-one, I always offer 2 to 3 different age-appropriate sleep training methods just because everyone has different parenting styles. So I actually never do true Ferber with families. I do something called check and console, which is a modified Ferber. I find that for me personally and for my clients, it's more straightforward, it's less confusing, and it works just as well. When it's implemented properly, you can get results for night at least in just a few nights. In terms of when that's appropriate, um, I work with babies doing that method as young as 10 weeks old. So if your baby's 14 weeks, you can totally do something like that now. And Ferber as well. You can do Ferber now if you wanted to do true Ferber. Okay. You're very welcome. Okay. 7 to 8-month-old baby gets only 12 plus hours in total for a typical day sleep and 9 night sleep. So, wait, sorry, can you just clarify that question? So, 12 hours in a 24-hour period, or is it? Okay. So, it depends. If your baby has lower sleep needs and they're happy and thriving throughout the day and their temperament is nice and even, then I would say, sure, like that's probably okay. Like it's definitely on the lower end of what they need. 7 to 8 month olds require 14 to 14 and a half hours of sleep in a 24-hour period on average. So, like I said, if your baby has lower sleep needs and they're happy during the day, then that's fine. 9 hours overnight for this age is definitely on the lower side. We're looking for like 3-ish hours overnight, and then like maybe 11 to 12, 3-ish hours during the day and maybe like 11 to 12 overnight. um but again, like if your baby is happy and their temperament is nice and even and you feel like they're well rested and they're healthy and growing and your pediatrician of course has no concerns, and like I'm not overly concerned. I would be curious to know, like, if we spoke separately, what your schedule looked like for the daytime and night. But again, like I said, if they're happy, healthy, growing, and well rested, then it's not a huge concern to me. Okay, following up for Ferber or check and console, what is your recommendation if baby is taking, you're welcome, if baby is taking one night feed of 2 ounces around 2 a.m. and how to handle this with the handle pacifier with this? Okay, so let's talk about night feeding first, and then I'm going to talk about the pacifier because I'm sure people have questions about both. So I want to just clear things up. The definition of sleep training, all it is teaching your baby how to fall asleep independently for naps and bedtime, and then teaching them how to fall back asleep independently during the middle of a nap or during the middle of the night. So, sleep training and night weaning are not synonymous, right? A lot of times, what will happen is once you sleep train a baby, they will kind of naturally wean themselves from whatever feeds they were doing overnight. Sometimes a baby might require some more scaffolding when it comes to night weaning, but again, sleep training and night weaning are not the same. So that means that you can sleep train a baby who does still need to eat overnight. All I would care about is that once you feed your baby overnight, you're putting them back down in their bassinet or in their crib totally awake so that they could fall asleep independently and from that awake state again. Because if they fall asleep at the breast or at the bottle and you put them down and asleep, what's likely going to happen is they're going to wake up being like, oh my gosh, where's the boob? Where's the bottle? Right? The way I was describing that Times Square comparison before, like that's what's going to happen. So you can feed your baby overnight if you need to and still sleep train them. So that's the first thing. Um, I have a feeling, especially if they're only taking 2 ounces, like you said, Emily, that they will naturally wean themselves and will probably shift those calories over to the day. Especially if this feed is driven more by habit over hunger, I'm sure they will kind of just wean themselves. If not, like I said, we can scaffold the process. In terms of the pacifier, so here's the thing about the pacifier. People think that sleep consultants are like so anti-paci. I am not anti-paci at all. The pacifier is an amazing tool that, especially in those first few weeks and like that fourth trimester, is great for soothing. But here's the thing about the pacifier for sleep. Your babies do not yet have the dexterity to replace the pacifier on their own when it falls out during sleep, which means that they are going to rely on you to replace it for them, excuse me. And at that point, you are just going to find that you are in this epic game of paci pong. And I don't know about you, but for me, I don't want to be playing paci pong in the middle of the night. I want to be sleeping, right? And I want my babies to be sleeping. So when it comes to the pacifier and sleep training, I recommend that you ditch the pacifier for sleep. I'm so glad it's helpful. I recommend that you ditch the pacifier for sleep, which means for nights and for naps. And there are exceptions, and I'm happy to talk about that separately or in a few minutes. But in general, you want to ditch the pacifier for sleep. Absolutely use it during the day when your baby needs soothing, for sure. But what happens is once your baby gains the confidence that they need and we really empower them with that confidence, then you're going to find that once they're able to fall asleep without the pacifier, then they're going to be able to fall asleep without it, fall back to sleep without it in the middle of the night or in the middle of the nap. Once your baby's old enough, so I'm talking like babies who are maybe like 7, 8, 9 plus months, and they are able to replace a pacifier on their own when it falls out, absolutely you can use it. Like there's no problem with the pacifier. You'll take it up with your dentist, your orthodontist when your kid's a teenager. Like if they need braces, at least they were sleeping when they were babies, right? So, there's no problem with using the pacifier for sleep once they're able to really replace it on their own. Once they are able to replace it on their own and you do want them to be using it for sleep, I would recommend throwing in tons of extra pacis to the crib. You can throw in 3 extra, you can throw in 15 extra. I don't really care. You just want them to be able to, when they're half asleep and it falls out, like reach for that pacifier and be able to find it easily and replace it on their own. Once you get to that point, and you find that, your baby still wants it for sleep, I would recommend during tummy time on the floor, or like whether they're on their tummy or when they're on their back on the floor, kind of create like a circle or a sun of pacifiers around them so that they can practice scooching and reaching for them so that when it comes time to actually, transfer that skill to the middle of the night or the middle of the night or in the middle of the nap, they're able to do so more easily. But just to go back to really young infants, once your baby is sleep trained and once your baby has a skill of falling asleep without the pacifier, you're going to find that they probably won't want it for sleep anyway when they become older infants. I know that was a long answer. Does that answer your question, Emily?
Yes, thank you. And you said just ditch it. So are we talking like cold turkey?
Cold
Just
turkey, baby. Yep.
okay.
Yeah. And like I said, there are some exceptions. Like early morning wakings, there can be some exceptions. If your baby is still taking a cat nap, so like uh, this is a separate subject, but I'll get into it now anyway. So for babies who are still taking a cat nap, so for babies who are on like 4 naps, for example, you're gonna find that your baby's gonna take cat naps at a couple different points of their sleep journey in the first year. So the first cat nap that they're going to experience is the 4th nap of the day. So once your baby is making the transition from 4 to 3 naps, which usually happens somewhere between 4 and 5 months, the 4th nap of the day is going to turn into a cat nap. The point of that nap is just to bridge the day to night. They need that 30-minute or so cat nap to be able to make it happily from whatever the nap is to bedtime. The point of naps is just to make it so that baby's not overtired and that they're able to make it to an appropriate bedtime. That 4th nap of the day, whether it's a full hour or a cat nap, is often a doozy for many babies. You can have a baby that's sleeping beautifully for the first 3 naps of the day. You could have a baby that doesn't make a peep at night, and that 4th cat nap is often a shit show, pardon my French, for many babies, including my oldest. Oh my God. Like literally it was the bane of my existence. And when I tell you that when my sleep consultant that I hired told me that I could hold my baby for that 4th nap every single day and that it wouldn't undo any of the progress he was making with other naps and nights, it was the greatest news ever. You can always, I mean, you can help your baby whenever you feel like they need help, of course. But for the sake of sleep training, for that 4th cat nap, if you find that they are struggling and you just do not feel confident that they're going to take that nap on their own, do whatever you need to do in order to help them sleep. And if that means giving them a pacifier for that 30-minute cat nap, go for it. Doesn't matter. It's not going to make or break anything at all. The 3rd nap of the day, once your baby's on 3 naps, can also be a little bit hard for some babies, but it's really that 4th nap of the day that can be really rough. So if that is you, you are so not alone. It is very, very common. Okay. Those are all the questions in the chat so far. Does anyone want to add anything to the chat? Does anybody have questions that they want to add here?
I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to try to articulate this concisely.
Whatever you do is great. It's fine.
So my daughter is about 8.5 months old.
Okay.
And it's just been, I have a son who's 3.
Okay.
And I thought it was trouble to get him to sleep. Now I really know what trouble looks like. So she has just a hard time falling asleep independently. She cries really, really hard. We live in a pretty small space, so I have been prioritizing the toddler's sleep, to be honest with you, to just like preserve sanity in our family. Last night was a new low for my daughter. So we are sort of still in the process of transitioning from 3 to 2 naps. And she has multiple caregivers all in home. So we're trying to get consistent with how we put her down. And there's still a lot of assistance. Like she might start off in the crib, but it might be just an hour and we know she's tired. So people might finish the nap off in arms. So I'm just looking for some like guideposts. I just feel like we're in this nebulous transition phase, but also had tried sleep training. I had done essentially what I think you're describing as the check-in approach, and then kind of went to Ferber. It just never worked. Like she just cries and cries and cries. She does not self-soothe. And I know the goal is to be consistent. I'm just like, we're real people. I work full time. Like I can't be consistent all of the time.
Yeah, it's really.
So not to vent or scare any of the people who are in earlier stages. I just think I need a little bit more like, this is what needs to happen and you need to muscle through it and then you'll get to the next stage. Even though I've been through it before, it feels all very different.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's really, I think one of the hardest things about having a second kid is that you're gonna inevitably compare them to your first. And to your point, like we're human and we're all different. So as hard as it's so much easier said than done, but they're different, right? Like it's going to be different. Um, I know naps, you said there's a little bit of rescuing happening in the middle of them, but like what about, tell me about nights.
So I'm not nursing to sleep,
Okay.
but I'm definitely nursing to like the drowsy, not beyond calm,
Okay.
and putting her down and she'll sort of settle in and I'll pat her and then I leave and she's like, what are you doing? Where are you going?
Right.
And then after a couple of attempts on that, I just close the door and let her cry for 3 minutes.
Okay.
And she usually then settles down. She wakes up, even she's still in our room.
Okay.
She wakes up at like 11:30. I feed to sleep. She's not really drinking. Last night was an anomaly, but often she'll also wake up at like 2:30, 3:30.
Okay.
And she won't go back down after that, like last night.
Okay. Okay. So first of all, I really feel for you. Okay. I'm really sorry that you're struggling with sleep in this way. I know it's really hard and the exhaustion, it impacts you all throughout the day. So I really feel for you. Okay. Big hugs through the screen. Okay. To your point, you are human and you're working and you're busy and it's hard to stay consistent. So why don't we try breaking this down into chunks? Because it's really hard when you feel like you have to tackle it all at once and you don't. Okay. For babies, it's much easier when you focus, if you're going to do one thing at a time, it's easier for them to learn night sleep first and then tackle naps. So if you're
Yeah.
going to pick one, focus on bedtime first, and then move on to the middle of the night, and then move on to naps. Because, like I said earlier, babies master sleep in a really specific order. And so, once your baby has a confidence at bedtime, we'll be able to then transfer those skills to the middle of the night. And then we'll be able to tackle naps. Naps are always harder for babies. Okay. But at this age, is she sleeping on her belly yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So, that will make it easier for her during the day, first and foremost. So, that will work in your favor. But why don't you start with naps first? I know a lot of times parents, like most families come to me saying like, I tried this, I tried that, I did taking care of babies and it didn't work. To your point, like it's a consistency thing, right? Like sleep, like anything else is a skill. And like our kids aren't learning, we can't learn to walk on their behalf, we can't learn to eat on their behalf, we can't learn to read on their behalf. Like we can't learn to sleep on their behalf either, or independently sleep, I should say, on their behalf either. And so if your goal is for her to sleep independently, we have to give her an opportunity to do that. Even if in the moment it's going to make us feel more tired when she's learning,
Mm-hmm.
if we do it right, it's only going to take a few days or to a couple of weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't want you to feel like you have to do all of this at once. It's harder. I would say you can't really do naps and not nights, but you can do nights and not naps, at least
Mm-hmm.
for the beginning. Okay.
Okay.
So start with bedtime, pick a sleep training method that really aligns with your parenting style, implement that consistently. And if you go into it knowing that in the middle of the night, you could do whatever you need to do to get her back down, then it's going to be so much easier because you'll have accepted that before you hit that bone tired period before bedtime, right? Before you got to the middle of the night. or you can commit to be doing bedtime in the middle of the night at the same time and just tackle all of that. And then just like whoever's watching her during the day, like naps are their problem, they're not yours, right? At least maybe the one thing you control during the day is how much sleep she's getting, right? Like making sure that she's not getting way too little or way too much, but like the independent stuff you could throw out the window for now if that's gonna make you feel super overwhelmed.
So, I mean, as far as the boundaries of consistency, sometimes it feels as if we're assisting naps. She's expecting that assistance at bedtime and in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that just a baby to baby thing? Or I would love to be able to isolate as you're suggesting, but I also feel like we're working, we're self-sabotaging.
Yeah, so it could be a baby to baby thing, but a lot of times, like once, like I said, once a baby masters nights, they're pretty good at separating the two. Um, like it could be a baby to baby thing, but I have a feeling I would really recommend starting with nights and seeing if that helps.
Okay.
Because there's a good chance that it will. And if it doesn't, then like, and her personality is just to like do this all the time, then like I would say you're gonna want to do naps as well. But do you have, I mean, like I know you work full time. I don't know what you do for a living, but do you have a period of time where you're gonna be off soon for a few days, a week?
No.
It's okay if you don't.
I mean, I get Fridays, so I have like a 3-day chunk.
Got it. Okay. I mean, listen, if you want to chat separately about like what like one-on-one support could look like I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay.
I work just, I don't think I mentioned this before, but if you live in New Jersey or if you live in the city, New York City, Brooklyn, anywhere, I do in person. So I offer in-person support, but I offer virtual support globally. So
Okay.
I could help wherever you are.
Okay. Sounds good.
Um,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. What age are they allowed to sleep on their belly? So it is recommended that we always place baby on their back, no matter what, in their crib or their bassinet. Once a baby starts rolling from back to belly on their own, then we can leave them there in their crib to sleep on their belly. Okay. But even once they are doing that in the crib or the bassinet, it is still recommended that you place them on their back. For those of you who do not yet have belly sleepers, let me just explain what it's going to look like because I will never forget the first time my oldest rolled his belly in his crib. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And if you know, you know. Okay. So for a lot of babies, when they roll to their belly for their first time in the crib or the bassinet, they let out a scream and a cry that you will have never heard before. It is very piercing. It's very startling. All it is them freaking out because they're like, I wasn't here a minute ago and now I am. And what the heck do I do with my body now? They are safe. They are fine. I could not encourage you enough to just let them be because they need to figure out how to sleep in this new position, which by the way is significantly more comfortable for them than sleeping on their backs. So now your baby needs to figure out, do they want to sleep with their arms above their head? Do they want to sleep with their arms tucked under their belly? Do they want them on their side? Like they need to figure out how they're going to get comfortable now. And so just give them the space. The more space you give them to figure out how to get comfortable on their belly, the sooner they're going to figure out that sleeping in this new position is a game changer for them. It doesn't always become automatic, which means that when you put them down on their back, once they start using this skill in the crib, it doesn't mean that they're going to start turning onto their belly the second they hit the mattress, right? Eventually they will do that. But at the beginning, as they're learning the skill, there is a period of frustration for them and maybe you too, where you're like, oh, you took such a better nap on your belly, or you slept so much better at night on your belly. Like, why aren't you flipping over? Be patient. Don't do it for them. It will become automatic. Okay. But to answer your question, they're allowed to sleep on their belly when they start rolling on their own. And even if they don't know how to roll back onto their back, from their belly, that's okay. They're safe as long as they've gotten there on their own. They're totally fine. Okay. Okay. Let me see. Okay, Albert, once the first child is sleep trained, when the second child comes, do we need to put them in 2 different rooms to train the second child? What if that's not possible? When can I start putting them to the same room? Okay, great question. So to your point, sometimes you don't have a choice and room sharing is the only option. For whatever reason, siblings have this insane sibling sleep superpower where like they don't wake each other up. Sometimes they do. Like, right? Obviously, if a kid is screaming, it's sometimes inevitable. But especially if your first child is already sleep trained and has independent sleep skills, they are likely going to be just fine at night. I can tell you when my second came along, I was petrified that she was going to wake up my oldest. Now, my baby at the time, my newborn was in my room with my husband and with me. Um, and she in general was pretty calm, but my son's room was right across the hall. So there was a chance that she was going to wake him up, and not once did he wake up from her. Like, did he wake up sometimes? Yeah, but it was never because of my newborn. So, in general, Albert, if when your second child comes, is is this baby going to be in your room at the beginning? Okay. So I don't know how long you're planning on keeping the baby in your room, but you do have an opportunity to do what's called sleep shaping. For those of you who don't know, sleep shaping is what we do with newborns at the beginning from day 1 to help establish healthy sleep habits from day 1. So it's not formal sleep training, obviously that's not viable, but the idea is that you're scaffolding this process of creating independent sleep habits from the beginning, with the hope that either you don't have to sleep train at all, or if you do have to sleep train, it's pretty uneventful. So you don't have to sleep shape, like you totally don't have to do that. But you do have an opportunity to, help establish healthy sleep habits from the beginning. Now, you can formally sleep train. I work with families starting as young as 10 weeks. So if you decided that at 10 weeks you were ready to go sleep train your youngest, you can totally do that with them still being in your room, so that by the time you were ready to transfer them to your oldest child's bedroom, they were both sleeping pretty well. But it is totally possible to sleep train um while they are room sharing. It's not like my preference. So like I said, if you have the opportunity to do it while baby's in your room, I would focus on that and then transfer to the other bedroom when they're both mostly sleeping independently. Does that answer your question? You're very welcome. All right. It is 1:45. So we have, how important is it to have a dark room to be how important is it to have the room be completely dark for sleep training? Okay. So people have different opinions on this, and this is also one of those things where it's like pretty baby dependent. At the very beginning, your baby like doesn't have the awareness or like doesn't care about a dark room because they just sleep all day anyway. But once they hit a certain point, they do develop an increased level of awareness. And so for some babies, they are going to get distracted and stimulated by what's around them. And so for some babies, a dark room really does make a difference. For my kids, they needed a dark room. Like if they didn't have a dark room, they would be doing God knows what in their cribs, right? For some babies, though, it really doesn't matter. And like they could sleep anywhere. I just didn't have those kids. For daycare babies, though, for example, like dark rooms aren't always an option. So for if you know that your kid's going to go to daycare eventually, you might decide, you know what, like I don't want them to get used to sleeping in a dark room right now because when they go to daycare, that's not going to be an option. So I'm not even going to create that habit. For other families, like my kids were daycare babies and like they were fine in the light room at daycare and fine in the dark room at home. They were able to tell the difference didn't make a difference for them. So there isn't really a super concrete answer here. I generally prefer a dark room, but you don't have to do it. I would say if you feel like you don't want to commit to super darkness, you don't have to at the beginning. But if you find that when it comes time to sleep train, your baby is getting distracted and stimulated by the things around them, then you might want to consider making the room darker. Another thing to consider, especially as babies are learning to take longer naps, sometimes you're going to notice that your baby is going to take a nap and they're going to wake up in the middle of the nap and they're going to be either calm or crying. Especially if they're calm, though, to me, like I would rather your baby wake up early from a nap and just be able to rest in their crib rather than them be taken out of their crib when they should at least be resting. But the thing about the rest is if their room isn't dark and they're able to look around, their brain is going to wake up more and more as time goes on. And instead of resting, their brain is going to be pretty active. So, at least to me, if their room is dark and they have a sound machine on and the space that you've created is conducive to sleep and rest, then at least they're resting in that space, and you're giving them a better chance of falling back asleep because they won't be distracted by what's around them. Does that answer your question? I know I just said a million things. Okay, awesome. All right, any other questions? Let's see. Is it important that during sleep training, the baby does not share a room with adults? No, you can totally sleep train when baby's in your room. My oldest, I was still living in New York City when we sleep trained my oldest, and he was still in our room. At least for nights, he was in our room. So you can totally sleep train when baby still shares a room with you. A few things to consider though. Think about where you have the bassinet in relation to your bed. So for some families, they do better when they move, if you have the space, of course, in your bedroom, moving the bassinet further away from the bed so you don't feel as compelled to reach over and like do whatever you're not supposed to be doing when sleep training. And I put that in quotes because like I hate telling parents like what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do. And then if your baby is going to be breastfed and you start sleep training, you might want to consider putting the bassinet on the side of the non-breastfeeding parent just because they won't be able to smell you and your milk as easily. But other than that, you can absolutely sleep train when baby's in the room. I just sleep trained an 11-month-old who's still in their parents' room. So absolutely you can. You're very welcome, Albert. How long is it okay to leave baby in the crib if they're awake after a full night's sleep? We see it on the monitor, but not fussing yet. So that's a really good question. It depends on what time they're waking. So I always say, and please feel free to like add clarifying points here as I'm talking on you. So I always say, like, say your desired wake time, your desired start to the day is 7 a.m. and your baby wakes at 6:30, okay? And your baby's calm to your point and just like resting and hanging out there. You can absolutely leave your baby in the crib to just rest and hang out until you're ready to start the day at 7. 30 minutes is not going to do anything. It's not going to do any harm. Nothing bad's going to happen. At least they're resting. It also helps them learn that like we're not going to get them the second they wake up. We don't want to create any sort of like association where like they open their eyes and we take them out of their crib, because then if they open their eyes in the middle of the night or in the middle of the nap, they might expect that to be taken out of their crib. So we don't need to get them right away. If they wake up at 6, it's the same thing. Like being in their crib from 6 to 7, if they're calm and resting, especially if their room is dark, is not going to do anything bad. You'll want to be mindful of the fact that they were awake for a little bit longer in case they have to go down for their nap a little bit earlier, but like you can totally give them space to rest and hang out in their crib from 6 to 7. Maybe they go back to sleep, maybe they don't. If they're awake at 6 and you don't want to give them space until 7, that's fine. I would say 6:30 is like a perfectly reasonable start time to the day. That's totally great. I consider anything before 6 a.m. to be the middle of the night. So, some babies will wake up. Like I've had a couple of clients who like we've checked off all of the boxes. Naps were great. They didn't need more sleep. They didn't need less sleep. They like everything was fine. And they were still waking up at like 5:30. They were totally calm, playing, resting, happy. And like there was nothing we could do at that point to get them to sleep later. So because I believe that anything before 6 a.m. is the middle of the night, if they're waking up at 5:30, and again, like this depends on a lot of different things, but in the case of my client, baby was waking at 5:30, they were happy. We decided, you know what, like we're just going to start the day at 6:30. If we need to make the first nap earlier, we do. But your baby's wake window starts from the time you get them out of their crib, not from when you open their eyes. Now, their temperament upon waking really matters. So like if they're waking up crying and they're really upset, then like yes, their brain is active and more stimulated, and maybe like you'll have to count a little bit of that as wake time. But generally speaking, like if your baby's calm in the crib, waking up after a full night's sleep and they're resting and happy, then like I said, you can give them some space in the crib. Nothing bad's going to happen, and you'll start their wake time from the time you get them from their crib. So if you have a goal of like if you have a goal of the first nap of the day being at a certain time, you want to think back, you want to plan backwards and think about like what time, if I know my baby's wake window is this amount of time, what time is that, like what's the earliest I could get them from the crib in order for them to make it to that first nap time? Does that make sense?
Oh, the chat turned off, but yes, thanks so much. Super
You're
helpful.
welcome. Okay, so I'm just gonna answer this. I probably have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. So my baby is 4 months old and she's a pretty good sleeper. We put her down awake and 9 out of 10 times she's going to sleep with no reassurance. She wakes up around 6 or 7 when dad's getting ready for work and will be awake for about an hour, then sleeps 8:30 to 9:30. Is this a normal first time length for a nap, or does she need to be going to bed earlier? Sorry, is the question, is 8:30 to 9:30 like a good nap time? Like length of nap time? Sorry, I can't call you by your name because it says iPhone 3. But if the question is 8:30 to 9:30 a good nap time, it's totally appropriate for that time. At 4 months, the first nap of the day, oftentimes we're looking for like a nap that's like an hour and a half. But if your baby's sleeping an hour at 4 months, like that's great. That means they are connecting their sleep cycle. And that's great. If your baby's waking up at 9:30 from that nap and they're totally calm and like resting, you can give them space until like 10 o'clock, for example, and get them at 10 and start the next wake window at 10 o'clock. If they're waking up like hysterically crying at 9:30 and they're really upset, that likely means that they're still tired and they're struggling to connect to the next sleep cycle. So you could still give them space to see if they'll, figure out how to get back to sleep on their own. But if nap training isn't something that you're considering or that you haven't started tackling yet, then like if they wake up crying after an hour, you can get them. It's not a problem at all. Does that answer your question? I'm just reading it again to make sure I answered. I think I may have answered it. To answer your question again, like I don't know whether or not she needs to go to bed earlier just because I don't know what the rest of the schedule is like and what the rest of her wake windows are like during the day. But if you want to reach out to me on Instagram or something, I'm happy to help you troubleshoot that. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions as we wrap up here? The chat, I think, is closed, someone said, but if you want to unmute yourself, you can always ask. If you have any questions about bedtime routines, night wakings, sleep training methods, anything is fair game.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you talk about the specific schedule for waking up like before 6.
Mhm.
What do you do when there's like a daylight saving time? Then like everything start messing up. Like, what is your recommendation? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I will never forget my first daylight saving experience as a mom. I planned like a maniac. I pushed bedtime like up 15 minutes every night or back 15 minutes every night, depending on which way the clocks were moving. And then I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years ago when I completely forgot that daylight savings was happening and I didn't do anything to prep. And it was the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. And I will never prep for daylight savings ever again. Most of the time, kids adjust. Like think about yourself in this situation. Like as long as you're consistent with yourself and like you don't start changing things up in your own routines and schedule, you eventually adjust to the new time, right? The same thing's going to happen with your baby or your toddler. If your baby or your toddler though isn't an independent sleeper, you're probably going to find that it's going to be harder for them to adjust to the new time, right? It's really only an hour, so it's not that bad. But if they're not sleeping independently to begin with, you're going to find that they're going to have more trouble than they might have if they were sleeping independently. So most of the time, I would say like my biggest advice is just don't do anything. Like it really it makes it just harder on the parent and it makes planning your days in advance leading up to daylight savings just more stressful. So if it were me, and like I tell this to my clients all the time, just don't do anything. They will adjust as long as you give them the space to adjust and as long as you're really consistent with your routines and everything. It might mean that like the first few days after the clocks change, you might have to make some adjustments to your schedule. Like maybe a nap will have to be a little bit earlier one day or a little bit later. But like in general, like you don't need to do anything. If you find that your baby wakes up at 6 and they're calm, then just start, like you can give them space until 7 and start at your normal time. Or if you could start at 6:30, like 6:30 is still totally reasonable. You just don't want to reinforce the early waking by getting them out of the crib and starting the day at that early time. You just want to try to be consistent and help them stretch that morning as long as possible.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so I think we're gonna end here. So like I said, first of all, I hope this was helpful. You asked really great questions, and if I didn't get to your questions, I'm really, really sorry. I'm going to put my information in the chat again. My email you're gonna have. I'm going to put my Instagram here. So give me a follow. I post a lot of sleep tips there, babies, toddlers, big kids. My DMs are always, always open. So please reach out. Like I said, I work virtually with families globally. So when I work with families virtually, you are going to get a completely customized written sleep plan. You're going to get phone calls with me. You're going to get 2 weeks of one-on-one text message support with me. And then beyond the 2 weeks, you do have unlimited email support with me. So our relationship does not just end after 2 weeks. It's very, very hands-on. My clients are very successful. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I would love to help you if you feel like you need one-on-one help. Like I said, if you live in New Jersey or if you live in New York, I do offer virtual in-person support. So the in-person support includes me sleeping in your home for 3 nights, implementing the sleep training there with and for you so you can really see how it's done. This is a great option for families who are just super desperate, they're bone tired, and they just need someone to really, really do it for them. And then in addition to the in-person support, you're also going to get the written sleep plan, that customized sleep plan. You're going to get the additional days of text message support. And then you're also going to get those phone calls and unlimited email support beyond the sleep consult. So both options are great options. They're both very hands-on in terms of the support that I'm offering you. If any of that sounds, of it like interesting to you, you could book a free discovery call with me right on my website. If you need help getting to my calendar, just shoot me a DM on Instagram and I'm happy to help you. But you can book a free discovery call, no pressure, no commitment. All it is talking about whether or not we'd be a great fit to work together. So I hope this was helpful. It was really, really fun. I'm looking forward to staying in touch on Instagram and on the Auggie app. Have a great day, you guys.